Hello, welcome back to another episode of Aaron's Baking Corner. Today we're doing bread pudding, which is kind of baking. I mean, the bread's already done, but you do put it in the oven, so that counts as baking. To kind of give it that fall Thanksgiving vibe, it's gonna be like a pumpkin bourbon bread pudding, so it's not just any basic bread pudding, which to me, it's one of those like interesting things while prepping for this. Bread pudding and like French toast. I had a third one and I lost it, but those all involve like stale bread, which were developed to use leftover things. Whereas in my case, I'm buying bread and then purposely making it stale, which just feels counterproductive to me. But we live in different times from when these recipes were made, and we have better preservatives. So here we are having to staleify bread for these recipes. All that being said, I'm pretty excited for this recipe. Bread pudding is one of my mom's favorite desserts, so hopefully this is a good one and then I can make this for her in the future. But enough about what we're doing today. I wanna have like a few little rants, little updates for it's all channel based, so it's not off topic, so stick around. But one thing I noticed is most of the views, like moderate amount, like they're pretty consistent. I have a few here and there that are like kind of big upturns, which I need to look at them. But I noticed that the mummy meatloaf had a big spike in views. And my assumption is that sensational thumbnails get them clicks. So I might need to start being a little clickbaity. We'll see. That implies that I have to be extra creative, but I might try that. So if the thumbnails start getting a little crazy, it's just me trying to get views. The content itself is gonna stay pretty much the same. It's just gotta get people in to then be like, oh, this guy isn't half bad, which is hopefully what everybody's saying. If people are like, he's terrible, you're welcome to leave. That's fine. I'm not holding it against you. For the people that enjoy it, stay, hang out. We're having a good time. I get to bake food each week and I'm loving it. Other news is I'm thinking about for December doing like dud December, where I purposely find recipes that I feel like are gonna end terribly, but I mean they're recipes, so somebody has to like them. And I found the inspiration for this was while looking for Thanksgiving recipes. One was called oyster pie, which is pretty much just oysters and saltines and heavy cream. And I was like, that can't be good. So I might try that and see, is it terrible? It seems like it's gonna be, but it's in a big magazine, so what do I know? And that's kind of the end of my rant. So let's run through the ingredients and then get into cooking. Bread, pumpkin puree, brown sugar, eggs, milk, cinnamon, vanilla extract, heavy cream, butter, ginger, nutmeg, salt, and pecans, and bourbon. So step one involves just a little bit of time travel because you need to go back to yesterday to cut up the bread so that it would be stale by today. Granted, you can speed up the process by like baking the bread at like a low temperature to pull out that moisture. Or if you have stale bread on hand, I mean, I don't know why you have 7 cups worth of stale bread just sitting around, but I'm not gonna judge what you do with your life. Gluten-free bread though, at least from my experience, doesn't really get stale all that much. Maybe gluten-free bread's superior in that regard. Anywho, get some stale bread, cut it up. You need 7 cups. And also the other thing, gluten-free falls short a little bit. All I have to really choose from is sandwich bread. And obviously if you have the choice, you want like a fancier bread, it calls for something else in the recipe. But if you can eat gluten, buy that bread. I'm guessing it'll be better. I don't know. So to summarize, travel back in time, cut up bread, and then use it now. The next step, which this process is pretty much cut bread, mix everything, soak bread, bake, and then also make sauce, but that's kind of like a side project that's gonna happen. It's pretty basic. So this next step is just to mix everything together. I don't think I can remember all. It's like the puree, the milk, the heavy cream, the butter, the eggs, the brown sugar, the ginger, cinnamon, salt, nutmeg, and did I say the puree? I think that's all the ingredients. But just pretty much put everything but the bread and the pecans, I don't ever know how to say that, into the bowl and then mix it up. A thing I noticed in the last step is what I don't know if the instructions say this, because what I do is I write down the instructions on paper. So I sometimes leave out probably crucial information. That's just part of the fun. But I did notice that while mixing, the melted butter essentially solidified again because we have cold milk, cold eggs, cold heavy cream. So you probably want to have all those be at room temperature when you're mixing it together, just so that the butter doesn't re-solidify. I don't know if that's gonna affect anything, or maybe that's supposed to happen, but I noticed that, and I figured maybe for the future, or if you try it, to kind of get those things at room temperature so that the butter stays melted, because I mean, it calls for melted butter, so I assume that it wants it in a liquid state, but that's just something I noticed. The next step is just to add in the bread and the pecans. I think that's how it's actually supposed to be pronounced. Every time I say it, no matter how I say it, it feels wrong. But mix those in and stir it up and then let it sit for 30 minutes. Gotta let it soak up all that delicious goodness that we just mixed together. It's been 30 minutes, and before I tell you the next step, I just want to say it soaked up so much just while I was mixing it, and then now after 30 minutes, there's pretty much no liquid left, which is perfect, because the next step is to put all of that bread goodness into an 8x8 pan, and then put that in the oven at 350 for 30 to 35 minutes. Now that the bread pudding is in the oven, the next step is to start on the sauce that's gonna kind of be drizzled on top. And it's essentially a caramel sauce with bourbon in it. And that's going to involve, the first step is a 1/4 cup of water with a cup of sugar in a medium pan on stovetop. We're gonna stir that together, let it get to a boil. And then once it's boiling, don't stir it anymore. And let it boil for 12 to 15 minutes, I believe. You're going for a dark amber color, and that's the goal. Now that the sugar mixture is the beautiful color that we want, we're going to add in, we'll remove it from heat, and then we're gonna add in the heavy cream and then the bourbon, and you're gonna continuously stir that until it's a smooth, I think smooth and creamy is how they describe it, but essentially until the bubbles kind of die down and it looks like caramel sauce. So now that the bread pudding and the sauce are done, next is to just kind of scoop out a slice of that and then drizzle the sauce on top, and you're good to go. All right, here we have it. It is beautiful, it is easy to show off, and I'm excited to try it. So let's see how this thing goes. Are you ready? I mean, that is delicious. I feel like I honestly, I'm usually not one for very sweet things, but I probably could use a little bit more of that sauce on top. I did it very lightly because I was like, my own taste, I'm like, I don't really want a whole lot of this on there. But I feel like a little bit more of that bourbon flavor would just be just what it needs. But that being said, it is still delicious. All I'm saying is I just want more of that deliciousness. None of that was negative. That was more of me just being like, I need to go a little harder next time. Not a whole lot to complain about there. It's just like warm and soft, and just the pumpkin isn't very, I was kind of thinking oh, this is gonna be a strong pumpkin flavor. It's pretty subtle, and it has a lot of the cinnamon and the ginger and stuff like that, and the ginger is not very strong either. All of them just work together to make one deliciousness. It doesn't really feel like anything's overpowering anything else. And it's not overly sweet. It's pretty mellow, the bread's doing its job of kind of absorbing that stuff and dispersing it. And it's just so soft and gooey. I now see why it is my mom's favorite dessert. And I will probably be making this fairly frequently because it was pretty easy, pretty quick. I mean, it took, I had to prep a little bit yesterday, and then it took an hour total. But I mean, it was mostly an hour hands off. It was probably 15 minutes of actually doing stuff, and then just an hour of sitting around. This is one that I feel like anybody can do. The only complicated part of this is, do you have an 8x8, which is a very low bar of complicatedness. So this is a recipe anybody can do. It feels very elegant, and even though it's kind of falling apart bread, but when you plate it up, it looks very nice. And it feels like you put a lot more effort into something than what it actually is. Which, granted, I mean, anything, if someone makes you something, they put effort into it, be appreciative. But this is one of those things that you can kind of impress people with. If you need a quick dessert that you don't really want to fuss with, this is probably a good move there. And so this could be an alternative to Thanksgiving pumpkin pie, because it has that pumpkin feel to it, but it has very little, well, I guess pumpkin pie is actually pretty low key as well, because it's mostly just mixing and putting it in to a pie dish. But I guess if you're trying to do everything from scratch, the pie dough kind of goes off the table there a little bit. But overall, delicious. I think you should make it 5 out of 5, obviously. I mean, it's great. And also it's a fun other thing for me to use my bourbon with, because I have a handful of different bottles of alcohol that I've solely used for making ice cream. So that's I do a bourbon honeycomb ice cream, also pretty tasty. But now I have something else to use my bourbon in, and so that's pretty exciting. And on that note, bye Mom, still not dead. See ya.